Anyone else have to use their ID to get up here?
Good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and call this Committee on Appointments to order at 8 o'clock. Good to see you all. We have a number of items today and a pretty packed commission schedule, so let's start with our first one. First is a resolution approving the City Commission's appointment of Dr. Virginia Beard to the City of Grand Rapids Affordable Housing Fund Board. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and supported. Colleagues, Dr. Beard is the first ward appointment from Commissioner O'Connor and Commissioner Repart, and has some significant technical experience in understanding housing and housing systems. So I think this will be an excellent addition to this board.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything else? Sorry.
Oh, I think that's it. She's done a lot of research on best practices for affordable housing funds, so this is a good fit for her, I think.
Okay, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it passes. Thank you. Next is a resolution confirming Mayor Bliss's appointment of Nathaniel Moody to the Southtown Corridor Improvement Authority.
So moved.
I should support that since Commissioner Moody's on the dais. If you recall, colleagues, the mayor had asked Daniel if we could have two commissioners on the CIA because Commissioner Moody was interested in serving, and I think for succession planning purposes, Commissioner Lanier, this is her last year, so it's grateful that Commissioner Moody is willing to serve in this way.
I
All those in.
I can't vote for myself.
Oh, he can? Okay.
Because there's no pay.
Oh, okay. Above the.
Sorry, there's no pay.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Next is a resolution confirming Mayor Bliss's appointment of Keith Brophy to the Smart Zone Local Development Finance Authority.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Mr. Brophy has been an entrepreneur a long time in the entrepreneurial spaces, and this is a reappointment, I believe, for Mr. Brophy. So let's just take it a little bit of time. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries. And last is a resolution confirming Mayor Bliss's appointment of Jessamine LeBolt to the Housing Appeals Board.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. And so if you recall the Housing Appeals Board, we had a number of openings. So grateful that we have Ms. LeBolt's name to move forward.
So the Housing Appeal Board is full at this point? We got everybody on?
The Housing Appeals Board is not full. We had, I think maybe might be 4. So this might take it to 3 openings. Okay, so there was 3. Today will be 1, so we'll have 2 more on the Housing Appeals Board.
Okay.
Yep. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Colleagues, just given the time that we have today, I will say if you could take a look at the openings. Daniel and I spent some time last week talking about housing appeal. There are some other individuals. Ms. LeBolt, I think, was one that was working through the vetting process. So thank you, Daniel, for working to get her on there. Also with the Historical Commission, we have 3 that are in process. Urban Forestry, there was 1, and we have actually 3 applications that are interesting. So I'd like to follow up on some conversations with staff and with you too, Commissioner Repart, because I think you've been a connection point to that board. Parks and Rec, there is 1 name that the mayor would like to move forward, but it is not yet fully vetted.
Okay.
And I will say Board of Museum, Urban Agriculture, the Uptown CIA, and Mobile GR have been discussed in our last meeting. And so we know that we have some PIFs. They're just working on being vetted on. And then Public Safety, I have somebody that's working on being vetted on, as well as Commissioner Lanier shared a name for a PIF to be completed. So I'm hoping that that board can be fully be filled as well. Any other comments on any of the openings or any updates you'd like to share generally? All right, well, thank you all, and we'll adjourn at 8:04. Thanks.
All right, good morning, everyone. We will call the meeting to order here at 8:15. First item on the agenda this morning is a resolution for the approval of broker-dealer agreements to participate in the investment competitive bid process. Piper Sandler and Company.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Treasurer?
Good morning, Commissioners. From time to time, we come to you and ask for approval to expand our broker-dealer relationships. This one is with Piper Sandler, and they are someone's group that has one of their specialties being public finance and public offerings, so this is right in our wheelhouse. They come to us, so a lot of times the brokers will come to us and ask to do business. It's not us searching them out. But this expands our base to 22, and we're asking for approval to do business with this in the competitive bid process.
Very good. Colleagues, questions?
None here.
All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 2 is a resolution authorizing a charitable gift agreement with the Peter and Joan Secchia Family Incorporated to assist in park maintenance services in the amount of $300,000.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Markwart, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. The Department is very grateful and pleased to receive this gift from the Secchia Family Foundation to support park maintenance efforts, specifically up at the entrance to the Belknap neighborhood, just off of the Medical Mile here. So very grateful for this opportunity.
All right, colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 3, resolution authorizing a 5-year lease extension agreement with K&K Investors Incorporated for the use of 36 McConnell, a public surface parking lot for $20,000 annually.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Casper, good morning.
Good morning. Before you today is an approval request for a 5-year lease renewal of the property in which the Ionia McConnell surface parking lot is located. This is the 291 space lot located across from the downtown market, and annual fees for the property are $20,000 and were included as part of the Mobile GR department budget.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4, resolution authorizing a compressed natural gas CNG fueling agreement with the Rapid and the annual not-to-exceed amount of $150,000.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Don't see Mr. Hurt here this morning. Colleagues, did you have a chance to review the resolution? Any questions about it? All right. With no questions, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 5 is a resolution authorizing a contract for the amount not to exceed $16,000 with the Dorothy A. Johnson Center for facilitation and evaluation of the spring 2022 cohort of the Neighborhood Leadership Academy.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Stout, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I'm excited to have Neighborhood Leadership Academy back. This 2.0 version was co-created with neighborhood associations as part of the regular Office of Equity Engagement budget, and it's designed to build capacity sustainability of our neighborhood associations and also nurture their equity journeys.
Very good. Kelly, questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, resolution authorizing expenditures to purchase a vibration analyzer in the amount not to exceed $29,292.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Greener, good morning, sir.
Good morning. What you have before you, Commissioners, is authorization to purchase a new vibration analysis tool. What this tool is part of a system that helps us do our predictive maintenance as well as troubleshoot equipment at the plant. The sooner that we can catch a small problem, it's a cheap problem. So we have to spend a little bit of money to save you a bunch of money down the road.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 7, ordinance amending Section 1 of Budget Ordinance 2021-13 for fiscal year 2022, amendment number 8.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Claire, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have a few items this morning. The first one is for the GFOA ERP Consulting. We approved a contract last fall to undertake this process, so this is more of a maintenance item where we're catching up the budget amendment. We're pulling from the remaining money in the transformation fund, which we originally were using with it was money left over from the original ERP implementation, and then the remainder coming from the general fund. The second item is the vehicle replacement purchase for the police department. This would authorize appropriations of $34,000 in the federal forfeiture for the Treasurer's Department fund, with a corresponding decrease in fund balance. The third item is appropriating, is basically catching up some capital projects that were intended to be done during fiscal year 20, but due to COVID delays, we haven't been able to address them till now. So this would authorize an increase of $385,000 in appropriations to the Information Technology and the Capital Fund 6810, with the corresponding decrease in retained earnings. And number 4, this is the innovation pilot for the urban wood utilization. This is one of our an initiative we took on by the city to find ways to save money, and the department's estimating an ROI of $45,000. So this would authorize a decrease of $30,300 in estimated revenue and appropriations from the general operating fund and general administration. So we're hoping to get this approved for revenue recovery with the ARPA dollars, and then make that appropriation over in the Parks Operating Fund with no effect on fund balance there. And then number 5 is the EDA grant for Cottage Grove Innovation District. This would authorize an increase of $11,200 in revenue and appropriation to the Capital Improvement Fund with no effect on fund balance. Our contingent balance remains unchanged at $1,401,145.
All right, colleagues, questions? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8, resolution authorizing budget substitution of $63,000 for design services for sidewalks and non-motorized pathways on Collindale Avenue from Lake Michigan Drive to Leonard Street.
So moved.
Moved and supported. Mr. Bergman, good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. So the Hastings Pathway between Coit and Sinclair project has been closed out, and there's a remaining balance of approximately $63,000 in that project. So requesting your authorization of this substitution, which puts us in a position to move forward with design services for either a sidewalk or non-motorized pathway on Collindale between Lake Michigan Drive and Leonard. And having those plans will put us in a good position to be able to submit a TAP grant application, hopefully later this spring. So asking for your approval of this substitution between Capital Improvement Fund project accounts to get on the design work.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Item 9, notice of intent to issue water supply revenue bonds.
So moved. Oh, or is this not?
I moved and supported. Ms. Chapman, good morning.
We're on.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before you is a 45-day notice of intent to issue bonds for the Water Department. We don't anticipate that we will need the full $60 million. It'll probably be closer to $50. We also anticipate they will be issued through the Drinking Water Revolving Fund loan with the Michigan Finance Authority, and also offer some principal forgiveness. Just a reminder that this notice of intent does not mean that we have to issue bonds. It means that we can. If I have any questions, I'm happy to take them. I do have colleagues here that are able to answer questions about the specifics of the projects that would be funded by these bonds.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 10, resolution authorizing a budget substitution of $154,700 for various water tank improvements and painting.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Mr. Bergman?
All right, this project was awarded back on January 11th earlier this year with a total project cost of $654,700. Consists of various repairs and improvements and recoatings at the Knapp and Leonard elevated tanks, which is identified in the Water Department's asset management plan. So requesting your approval of this budget substitution between the Water System Fund accounts to move the necessary funding into place for this project.
Very good. Colleagues? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 11, a resolution authorizing budget substitution of $25,078 for replacement of HVAC components at the Bridge Street Fire Station.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported.
All right, this project was originally awarded on October 26th of last year. Total authorized expenditures of $209,580. The asset management plan that was completed for the city's fire stations called for this work to be done, which consists of various HVAC replacements. So asking for your approval of this budget substitution between Capital Improvement Fund accounts to put the necessary funding in place.
Colleagues? All right, hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 12, resolution authorizing budget substitution of $875,000 for the Lake Michigan Filtration Plant switchgear.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported.
All right, this project involves replacement of the medium voltage switchgear out at the Lake Michigan filtration plant. The total project cost was increased by commission to $5,116,030 back on December 7th of last year. So requesting approval of this substitution of $875,000 between water system fund accounts to cover the associated increase.
All right, colleagues? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 13, resolution authorizing budget substitution, $276,000 for replacement of private lead service lines in various locations, contract 2021-1.
So moved.
Support.
This contract was awarded on December 14th and will replace approximately 325 lead service lines in census tracts 29 and 30. It's the second project being funded through the $5.1 million EPA grant that's targeting lead exposure in our drinking water systems. So asking for your approval of this substitution of $276,000 to move the necessary funding into place.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 14, resolution authorizing budget substitution, $48,050 for Lake Eastbrook Boulevard from East Beltline to 28th Street.
So moved.
Support.
All right, this project has been bid through MDOT and will reconstruct Lake Eastbrook Boulevard, including new water main, pathway, and a roundabout at Sparks Drive. The total project cost is $5.27 million, with our local share of authorized expenditures set at $4,345,400. So requesting approval of this substitution of $48,050 between water system and capital improvement fund project accounts.
Very good. Colleagues? All right. Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 15, resolution authorizing budget substitution, $257,318.47 for Strait Avenue and Wealthy Street reconstruction.
So moved.
Support.
So this is one of 5 projects that was ordered by commission at your last meeting that involves an estimated total of 253 lead service line replacements with funding provided through the Michigan Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. The total project not to exceed cost is $1.75 million, which will reconstruct segments of Strait and Wealthy and replace an estimated 22 lead service lines. So asking for your approval of this budget substitution between water system fund project accounts to move the funding into place.
All right, colleagues, questions? All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 16, resolution authorizing fiscal year 2022 budget substitution in the amount of $400,000 for Ball Avenue and Olson Street resurfacing project.
So moved.
All right, moved and supported. Mr. Jernberg?
Good morning, Commissioners. What you have in front of you today is essentially a placeholder. Recently, the water system became aware of the Olson Street project between Ball and Plymouth. In that area, we have a water main that extends halfway down the block and then is a dead end, and then it results in 3 long side services in the right-of-way to 3 other properties. The money we're setting aside will allow for construction to continue that water main to tie into Plymouth and loop the water main.
Very good. Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 17 is our resolution authorizing bid list, February 22, 2022.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Ms. Golden, anything you'd like to point out on this morning?
Nothing today.
Colleagues, questions? All right, hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 18 is our forecasting report for February 22, 2022. Colleagues, questions? Hearing none, that report is received and filed. Item 19, warrant report, January 26, 2022 through February 8, 2022. Mr. Comptroller, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the period referenced there, the city released cash payments totaling approximately $22.9 million, which includes $4.6 million for our employee payroll expense and just over $95,000 for income tax warrants during that period. In terms of quantity, that equated to 505 income tax refunds being issued and 1,252 accounts payable checks being issued. And the tables on the following 2 pages contain the details of all those payments that exceeded the amount of $20,000.
Very good. Colleagues, questions for the Comptroller? All right, hearing none, that report is received and filed. Thank you, sir. And our final item on the agenda this morning is the Treasurer's Report for period January 22, 2022 through February 7, 2022. Mr. Treasurer.
Good morning, Commissioners. Right now, our focus is what's been occurring in Eastern Europe. As we see the Russians have gone into Ukraine and 2 different areas. Right now, you're starting to hear about the economic fallout is starting to occur. So the Germans are stopping Nord Stream 2, which is a major energy pipeline. There's other things that are taking place right now. So really our attention is going to be what's this fallout going to be in terms of the world market. We should start seeing oil prices shoot up. And what's that impact going to be on us? You know, we're coming into a season where as we hit spring and summer, we're going to be shifting over our gas mix from the winter mix to the summer mix, which actually increases the price. We're going to see our own refineries shutting themselves down at various times to do maintenance. So that's, for us, that's going to be higher gas prices. This is the projection we're going to see right now. But our eyes are focused on what is that going to do in the global world market, but also we know that within the next 30 days, the Fed's going to meet and talk about interest rates and how they're going to raise those. You're starting to hear pressure. It's not just going to be 25 basis points. It might be 50 basis points right out of the gate. So right now there's a lot of turmoil. So we look at our own policy and our own process, and having people like Piper Sandler joining us, we've got 22 very, very good firms ready for us to use in a competitive bid process, as we have 25% of our portfolio is going to mature in the next year to 2 years. So we're prepared to weather the storm and then go even further as we see interest rates rise. So right now our portfolio stands with $551 million earning 1.27%, which is still an outstanding return considering today's market. So with the work that Levi Bolt, our investment analyst, has done, we're well positioned to excel into the future.
Very good. Colleagues, questions for the treasurer? All right, hearing none. The report is received and filed. And with that, we'll conclude this meeting at 8:32. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Welcome to the Community Development Committee meeting on February 22nd of 2022. I'll call this meeting to order with our first resolution, which is, a resolution awarding a contract with Engineered Installation Solutions for an outdoor fitness court at Ottawa Hills Park in the amount of $25,000.
So moved.
Support.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is one step closer to installation of the outdoor fitness court in Ottawa Hills Park. We're excited for this contract to be put into place, allowing us to begin work on this really important amenity in this park space.
Great. Any questions or comments? Hope to see you all when it's installed at the ribbon cutting with your workout gear on. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? It carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next resolution is to schedule a public hearing to consider establishing an industrial development district for Action Tooling LLC at 3100 Kenosha Industrial Park Court Southeast.
Support.
Moved and supported. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So this morning,
I'm like, I thought you were moving your head, but the voice was coming from this way.
So items 2 and 3 are related, so I'm just going to do a quick briefing so that way we can do both of them very quickly. So the item 2 is establishing the industrial development district, which will allow to proceed with the industrial facilities exemption certificate, which is item 3. Again, for the same project located at 31 Kenosha Industrial Park Court Southeast. For the company now known as Action Tooling LLC. So this was set public hearing for March 15th at 7 p.m. Again, the proposed project is the construction of a new 15,000 square foot industrial facility that would allow Action Tooling to service a much larger customer base, which is moving their abilities around up to 50 tons, where they're only at 10 tons right now based on the molds that they're making, and expanding their capabilities for both existing and new clients. Now, the project includes $2.6 million of construction costs and $2 million of personal property. Again, we've asked them to submit the inclusion plan, which is about $186,000. At 7%, it will create 15 new jobs and an average raise of $30 an hour. So that would be both items number 2 and 3 for this project.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. It carries. So our next resolution, Jeremiah has already covered, but we need to vote on this one. It's the resolution scheduling a public hearing to consider an application for a 12-year industrial facilities exemption certificate filed by Action Tooling LLC for a $4.6 million project located at 3100 Kenosha Industrial Park Court Southeast.
I'll move it.
Support.
Any additional comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That one carries. Our next resolution is approving and authorizing execution of lease amendments for the Salvation Army and Community Rebuilders for leased space at 1120 Monroe Avenue Northwest.
Move it.
Support.
Good morning.
Good morning. So this is related to the city's property at 1120 Monroe, the Development Center. We have tenants in that building. Two of those tenants are Salvation Army and Community Rebuilders. The Salvation Army has notified us that they intend to vacate that facility over time. So in March, they plan to move out of one of their suites on the second floor. And then in fall, sometime, a date yet to be determined, they plan to vacate their first floor space as well and the parking spaces that are assigned to them. Somewhat fortunately, Community Rebuilders is doing very well and wants to occupy those spaces as soon as they become available. So in order to accomplish that, there are amendments that need to be signed for their leases to take space away from the obligation of Salvation Army and add it to the space of Community Rebuilders. All the terms and conditions of the leases stay the same. The city won't make any improvements for Community Rebuilders if they want to do that. It's up to them. And Community Rebuilders will be paying the same rate that Salvation Army pays for their space, which is a little bit higher than Community Rebuilders pays for its other space, but that was negotiated and is mutually acceptable to both parties. So pretty straightforward. Fortunate for the city to keep a tenant and allow them to grow in that space over there.
For sure.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. Our fifth resolution is scheduling a public hearing to consider a request to establish a neighborhood enterprise zone for the Studio Park Phase 2 residential tower project.
Support.
Good morning. So this is a resolution setting March 29th at 7 p.m. As the public hearing to be connected in connection with the application for this 12-year neighborhood enterprise zone exemption certificate filed by Studio Park Lofts. This, in summary, the developer intends to construct a 212,000 square foot, 16-story mixed-use building above the existing Studio Park parking ramp. So it's 11 stories containing 165 residential units, 4 stories containing 24 residential condominiums, 1 floor of amenities, and the 700 square foot retail on the first floor on 100 Oaks. So total project cost is about $52 million. So again, for context, this was what you see today at Studio Parks Phase 1. This is Phase 2, which is all the residential apartments. So what's important to note, this NEZ exemption will only apply to the 165 apartment units and not for the for sale condominium units or the existing apartments. So this is what this is for. And so the 12-year exemption is aligned with our commission policy that allows them some bonuses. In this case, they are putting some electric vehicle charging stations in there. So its baseline is 9 years for the city, and then they got additional for this charging stations. And again, they got a $1.8 million of MLB, MBE, and WBE overall construction, which we record in our inclusion plan. So Planning Commission approval is not required for the project. The developer did receive additional support from the DDA earlier this month for costs for fire suppression in the existing parking ramp and elevator and other investments related to the American with Disabilities Act. So they are supporting the project as well. And then we will also take this for a Brownfield Plan Amendment tomorrow in the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. And if that is approved, you would also see another hearing on the 29th for that Brownfield redevelopment, or I'm sorry, that Brownfield amendment. And then you would have this neighborhood enterprise zone hearing as well. So both of those will come forward on March 29th. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Any questions or comments? None? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. Next up is the sixth resolution, awarding a contract with Epic Excavating, Inc. for systematic sidewalk repairs at various locations, 2022-1, in the amount of $404,725, with total amount not to exceed $425,000.
So moved.
Support. All right, good morning, Commissioners. So this is the first of our 3 annual systematic repair contracts as we move throughout the city with our inspection and repair of sidewalks. Each of the 3 bids that are before you for this item and the next two were over estimate. Admittedly, we didn't increase, I think, our construction estimate enough given the current climate. But also, it's a condition of this work in particular is difficult. There's a lot of setup and tear down because it's spot repairs. And so there's a lot of extra labor by the contractor to move in and out of these neighborhoods and take care of isolated spot areas. But this contract in particular is for work in the First Ward, taking place generally in the Shawmut Hills and West Grand neighborhoods. Work is slated to occur between April 1st and June 30th. Two bids came in on January 25th, and Epic did provide the low bid of $404,725, and they'll be using a 32% MLBE participation rate, so subbing that to a MLBE sub, but they are also an MLBE prime. Financing for this contract and the next two will all come from the Sidewalk Repair Fund.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. The seventh resolution is awarding a contract with Groundhog Excavating and Landscaping, LLC, for systematic sidewalk repairs at various locations, 2022-2, in the amount of $326,920, with the total amount not to exceed $350,000.
Support.
So this one covers work in the Second Ward in the Michigan Oaks and Midtown neighborhoods, with work taking place between September 1st and November 18th. Three bids came in on January 25th, and Groundhogs provided the low bid of $326,920. They will be utilizing 40% MLBE participation and is also an MLBE prime themselves. So request your approval of this award.
Great. Any questions or comments, colleagues? None? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. The eighth resolution is awarding a contract with Caminga Royd Voigt, Inc. for systematic sidewalk repairs in various locations, 2022-3, in the amount of $389,646.20, with the total amount not to exceed $415,000.
Support.
So this is the Third Ward contract, work taking place in the general neighborhoods of Ottawa Hills, Southeast End, and Eastgate between July 1st and August 31st. And K&R was the low of two bidders with that bid amount of $389,646.20, and request your approval of this award.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. It carries. Our ninth resolution is approving agreements for professional architectural services for various projects for 3-year terms with authorized expenditures not to exceed $5 million.
Support.
So our current architectural term agreement was approved in February of 2019, so the 3-year term expires later this month. Rather than extending the agreement that we have in place, we made the decision to solicit a new architectural services agreement with the intention of including a more diverse pool of recently registered consulting firms. So we went ahead and issued that RFQ to 178 firms that's in our database, including companies that were recommended by the Office of Equity and Engagement. We received 30 qualification packets in response to that RFQ. And the slate we're recommending to you today consists of 25 consultants, 8 of which are new additions to that pool of consultants. One of those firms is an MLBE that is also a minority owned, so both MLBE, MBE. 4 other firms are also minority owned, 2 of which are new to the term agreement this round. And 1 firm that's new to the term agreement is a women-owned business enterprise. So in total, we have a net change of 1 new MLBE, 2 new MBEs, and 1 new WBE. So request your approval of these agreements with these firms and authorize expenditures in the amount of $5 million, which will be charged to the budgets for which these services are required.
Great. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. Our 10th resolution is awarding a contract with Caterberg Verhaeg for improvements to Hartside and Pickage Parks in the amount of $797,390, with the total amount not to exceed $993,000.
Support.
Very good. This agenda item, approval of this agenda item will allow us to begin reconstruction of these park projects. These are some of the last remaining projects from the 2013 millage. As a reminder, this will bring a new restroom facility to Hartside Park that will be year-round and all gender and self-cleaning. We're very excited about this amenity and are hopeful that it proves to be successful for other park projects in the future.
Great. Any questions or comments?
I just want to thank your team for all the engagement that they did. I know that there's a lot of attention on both of these two parks, and I think that the plans that have been come up with really took into account all the feedback from neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you. And another bathroom downtown that's open all year round is going to be great.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. Our 11th resolution is accepting 2 sidewalk and utility easements, authorizing a payment of $1,132 and dedicating city-owned property as public right-of-way for reconstruction of and water main in the Ottawa Avenue, Coldbrook Street, Monroe Avenue intersection, decommissioning of Coldbrook Pumping Station.
So moved.
One of you have to support.
Think about it.
We can't move.
All right. All right, a roundabout is proposed at this intersection, which will eliminate the traffic signal and better facilitate traffic flow. Construction of that to occur in 2023. Autodye LLC, which owns property on 3 corners of the intersection, has conveyed 2 sidewalk and utility easements on the northeast and southwest corners of the intersection for a total compensation amount of $1,132. The other property that requires right-of-way dedication is on the northwest corner, which is owned by the city. A corner of that parcel has been occupied by the public sidewalk at that intersection for over 100 years, but has not been formally dedicated as right-of-way. So we're seeking your action in that as part of this resolution, as well as accepting the 2 sidewalk and utility easements and authorizing that payment.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. The 12th resolution is approving a 1-year extension for the professional architectural services agreement with RJM Design, Inc.
So moved.
So this relates to the architectural services term agreement that you just renewed for the 25 consultants. RJM was on the previous term agreement, but did not respond to that solicitation. So they're not included in the next round, but they are continuing to perform services on projects that we have out and underway currently. So we're asking for this extension of their original agreement that was approved back in February of 2019 for a 1-year period to allow for completion of that work.
Got it. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. Our last resolution is approving an extension for bridge inspection and other related services agreement with Scott Civil Engineering Company with an unchanged total not to exceed amount.
Support.
What's an unchanged total not to exceed amount?
No additional money requested. But Scott Civil is on our term agreement for bridge-related services and in particular handles our bridge inspection program. So this agreement originated in 2016 and has since been extended on 2 occasions through February 9th of this year, which of course is now passed. We're in the process of soliciting firms for a new round of bridge-related term agreements, and we'll be bringing an item to you on that in the near future. But need to continue this particular agreement with Scott Civil, in part because they're currently assisting us with the design of a system to install a water quality monitoring device on the 6th Street Bridge as part of our work with the USGS to monitor water quality on the Grand River. And so that project is looking to begin here in 2022, so we need their services to get us to a point of being ready for that. So asking for your approval to extend this agreement for an additional 2 months to cover that work.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It carries. That is the conclusion of the Community Development Committee meeting. Meeting adjourned. So Joel, can you talk a little bit about the rest of our morning? When are we to vote on the executive session before COW?
So the mayor will convene committee of the whole at 9:45. And then there'll be a motion to go into closed session immediately.
Okay.
And then we'll start the business at 10,
Sounds good. Thank you.
Lord willing.
And welcome to our meeting on this February 22nd, this rainy February. So Commissioners, just to walk you through today, I'm going to call this meeting to order. And we have one action item before we get to our briefing. But before that, we have an executive session based on a legal opinion. And so I'd like to go into that before we get back to our resolution and mid-year briefing. So can I get a motion to go into executive session? And we'll just go into 9:01 right here. It should take less than 10 minutes, and then we'll come back out here and resume our agenda.
Moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. This is a voice vote. I'll start down here with Commissioner Isasi.
Yes.
Commissioner Reppert?
Yes.
Lanier?
Yes.
O'Connor?
Yes.
Jones?
My answer is yes.
Nate?
Yes.
All right, and I'm a yes. So Commissioners, let's grab our items. We'll go into 9:01. Those in the audience can stay put. Hopefully it won't be that long, or you can take a little break for yourself, and we'll resume back in here together momentarily. Welcome back to Committee of the Whole. We'll go ahead and get started, Commissioners. Our first item before us is a resolution, I should say our first and our only action item before us, is a resolution approving the request from SIP Partners LLC for a new Class C redevelopment liquor license to be located at 806 Elder Street Southeast. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, moved and supported. City Clerk, anything to add on this item?
Just give it, it's on the corner of Elger and Eastern, right next to Brass Ring there, and Southtown Corridor Improvement District approved it at their last meeting.
Great. Yeah, I'll be excited to go over there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, with that, I will call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it carries. All right, Commissioners, that will take us to our mid-year update on financial management and key performance areas. So this will be led by our city manager and his leadership team here at the city. And then also it will tee us up for our future conversations about our upcoming budget, which will take on in April and May, city manager. And there's a schedule in the handout and the PowerPoint that kind of walks us through the schedule for the next few months. So with that, I'll turn it to our city manager to get started and let him take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. And we're mindful today of the time, as this is a very important day in which we celebrate the renaming of 2 streets after civil rights leaders. But wanted to take a moment, if you can advance to the next slide, to thank the team for their work in putting this together. As you'll see today, a lot of staff collaboration took place to make this update possible. But in keeping with our tradition, we wanted to have one final conversation before we finalize the budget proposals on where we stand financially and provide you an update on some of the projects, as the mayor has said. And we continue to use strategy as a roadmap, as well as the philosophy of the continuation budget in these very uncertain financial times. Although what you'll see today is better than anticipated fiscal impact with our mid-year report. We're still uncertain about how the remainder of the fiscal year will conclude. But we are very appreciative and thankful of the position that we're in. Very thankful for the federal relief funding that has been able to help us sustain current operations and also to focus on some of the near-term priorities that you've highlighted. As the mayor said, in terms of our timing, after today, in the middle, this will inform the staff's feedback. Your feedback will inform the staff's final preparation of the budget, which we will introduce on the 26th and spend the majority of May discussing prior to adoption on the 24th. So today, I'll turn it over shortly to our CFO, who will give us a financial update. We'll also talk about participatory budgeting in that part, as well as our legislative update, and then we'll continue to discuss some of the other near-term priorities that you identified in the fiscal plan around housing and homelessness, public safety, crime prevention, and some of our other relief and recovery efforts related to COVID, along with the master plan, as well as some of the other key projects that we have been focused on. So I think in terms of managing our time today, I would like Ms. Claren to lead the discussion on the finances, and her and Mr. Matthews and Ms. Farrick, and then we'll pause then to see what discussions see what questions you have, and then we'll continue with the balance of the presentation. Ms. Claren?
Good morning, Commissioners. This morning, I'll start out just saying what is our fiscal state. So again, we're still dealing with a lot of the uncertainties as a result of COVID as our economy is rebuilding. Our income tax is actually trending positive relative to last year, so that's good to see. And then as far as our other revenues, we're also seeing a lot of positive things here. While I won't be able to, just because of the time I have with you today, I won't be able to cover all of those revenue streams, which I usually would. What I do plan to do, though, is take everything I would have provided to you today and packaged that, give it to you later this week. So you do have that information as we do go into the budget. So we continue to utilize our reserves. You know, we have these strong fiscal policies that put us in a good position to be able to deal with what we've dealt with over the past 2 years. And through it all, we've had 3 different bond issuances over the past year and a half and have managed to maintain our bond rating. So that's something we should definitely be applauded for, as we've seen a lot of our neighbors unable to do that. And then with, you know, on the heels of that, our staffing and service levels have been maintained. So if we've been going to conferences, hearing from experts, here's a few takeaways from the Seaman College of Business at GVSU. This was consistent with what we saw on my next slide, which is the key takeaways from the Economics Club is while we're seeing this rebuild happening locally, you know, we see that growth, you know, starting to slow coming into 2023. So you'll see how that fed into our assumptions for income tax. But the key takeaway there is, you know, what's going to happen with all this debt our nation has taken on. I know at the Economics Club, they talked about how debt is 80% of GDP. And when that happens, you know, you see this economic contraction happen or definitely a slowdown. So we're going to be mindful of that. I'm going straight into our income tax. I'll remind you, 83% of that does go towards the general fund. Collections that we did in 21 are being refunded in 22. When we talk about that non-resident withholding, we calculate that to be around 46.9 million for 2020, or for, you know, this fiscal year. Those at risk for refunding, 28.1. So 60% of that total, those people do have the ability to allocate if they're still in that position, based on what we're seeing from quarterly reporting and the trends we saw, you know, with last year's returns. Our exposure is probably around 13.5 million. So with that in mind, going forward, another thing we are seeing is people filing 2020 with their 21 tax returns. So we're getting more money back into the city coffers that way. We are trending up around 7.7 million, which is about 6% right now. I'm hoping, you know, given what we're seeing, we'll be able to beat that assumption. But for now, we're going to hold that 6% assumption for fiscal year 22. Going into 23, you see I back that down to 4%. That's just recognizing a bit of a slowdown. And then we're going to our city average of 3%. I do have a slide, which I'll provide for you later this week, that shows that overall 10-year average of what we typically collect, and it is around 3%. As far as our work on compliance, we're still addressing that backlog. So we still have a lot of compliance that's going to, be coming in. So we're assuming 10 million for the first 2 years, and then you'll see that taper off as we get caught up. So moving into our 5x5, you'll see that income tax line going across, fairly stable, increasing growth. Property tax, again, that's ever increasing. We have a strong market there. And then with other revenues, you'll see for fiscal year 21, it's 59.3 million. That includes around 14 million of COVID relief funding. So typically that category is around 45 million. So you'll see 2021 was an exceptional year for that category. And had it not been for that relief funding, we would have been operating on a deficit for fiscal year 21. So that ended the year, our unassigned fund balance, our policy level is 15%. We ended the year at 31.5%. Moving into fiscal year 22, you'll see a fourth category for our revenue where we have calculated losses achieved in 2022 per the U.S. Treasury's final rule. So 14.5 million is going to most likely be applied before the end of this fiscal year. And that will round out our year with our current estimations around 11 million surplus. Then moving on across the forecast, you'll see I did have in italics about 20 million over the next 2 years of revenue recovery. This was put in place strictly for the assumptions we had at the time I did this 5x5. This does not include any of the shaping we've done for the fiscal year 23 budget. So I will be showing you an updated 5x5 when we do the introduction of the budget. So those revenue recoveries very well may go up because there are things that are not built into there. But for right now, for the purposes of this 5x5, we plugged in what we needed to just achieve our policy level through fiscal year 26. The other main revenue stream I wanted to talk about, because it has been extremely volatile throughout the pandemic, was mobile GR. You'll see we included for the operating revenue the 2019 normal level. Usually they exceed 21 million, somewhere in there. And as you can see with the pandemic, their revenues are basically decimated through 20 and 21. As we look at what we expect to achieve in 22 through 24, you see we don't get back up to that 21 million level for a while. So that's why we've been doing things with the ARPA revenue recovery to supplement that system, as they have done, rollbacks where they can. They do have a backlog of asset management because that's where they've been cutting. So this is an example of a great case for application of revenue recovery. This is just further information showing the impact on their event revenue. That has not come back yet, and we don't expect it to through 2024. We're still waiting to hear people want to come back together, meet, do events, but it's obviously a big moneymaker for the parking funds. We'll keep an eye on that. So the key takeaway is our revenues are lagging, but throughout this year, you've seen the budget amendments come through for revenue replacement, particularly with the elevators, the multi-meter stations, as well as stairwell repair. I anticipate us having to apply more as we go if we don't see those revenues recover as fast as we would like. And then we did approve a on-street parking rate increase, as well as hours of enforcement adjustment, which are going to go live in April of 2022. The other notable thing about this fund is we did shift responsibility for enforcement from GR Police Department to mobile GR. And then just to give you an update on where we're at with our ARPA spending. So we did receive 92.3 million, or approximately 92.3 million. These are the general categories. You'll see the names are slightly altered. They're more consistent with the U.S. Treasury final rule. So if you did go look at that compliance guidance, things like that, you'll see, okay, what does qualify under there? And you'll see a lot of our items do. But as far as revenue recovery, I mentioned that we did calculate some towards the general fund for this year based on our 2020 losses. We do plan to roll out a little over $5 million towards the GR Mobile Fund, as well as 61st District Court. For the losses calculated for 2021, that's still being determined, like I said, with our assumptions in the general fund. So approximately $30 million right now towards the general fund, and then we anticipate mobile GR needing more, as well as the other funds, capital. A lot of this is going to be subject to what we're seeing as the needs through the 23 budget requests. We have the categories for public health, which is, reimbursing our medical insurance fund, as well as the fire department overtime. The budget amendments we've done towards business recovery, those nonprofits that have faced negative economic impacts as a result of the pandemic. And then you'll see these other general categories, our broadband project, for instance. You'll hear about the participatory budgeting. And then the efforts we're making towards affordable housing, which Ms. Botach is going to talk more about today. But some of that, besides the $5 million, also includes those BAs we did towards winter sheltering expansion. Sorry. So that's overall what we're doing with ARPA. Again, this will be updated by the time we present budget. So overall, just to wrap up, we are concerned about, the inflation threat. In January, we saw a 7.5% increase, which is the greatest in over 40 years. And then consumer spending, while we have this pent-up demand, we also have supply chain issues and other market shocks that are affecting us. Our city treasurer talked this morning about expecting a rate hike. Latest we heard was as of May of 22, expects, something to go up. I believe the city treasurer mentioned it could be as high as a 0.5%. Unemployment's an issue, and dealing with the labor participation, and then what's the effect on general affordability for our citizens. So for the fiscal plan, as the city manager mentioned, it's going to be a continuation budget. We do have this ARPA revenue recovery to rely on, where we're fortunate where we don't have to rein in services, but obviously with the inflation factor, to do what we do, it's going to cost a little more next year. So we're anticipating that. Focusing on core operations and our near-term priorities, and then fine-tuning our assumptions. So you will see some changes from the numbers I presented already, just based on what we know now compared to what we're going to know in April. We'll have the first quarter of income tax returns, for instance. So hopefully we'll be able to plug more into that 6%. But again, I know this was a really quick financial update, but I will be providing you more information later this week. And then I will turn it over to Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, ma'am. So just wanted to give you a quick update on where we are with participatory budgeting. As we've discussed in the past presentations, there's been some starts and stops along the way as we've adjusted to make sure that we're getting this process right. Just a reminder, and for those who may not be aware of the process, that's $2 million that we allocated across all three wards, $1 million to the third, $600 to the first, and $400 to the second. Launched in September 2021. We've got a group of residents on a steering committee that have been working on organizing this activity since then. I'm happy to say that as of last week, not only had we gotten signed agreements from our community partners to help with outreach and education, we conducted 2 orientation sessions. We actually brought the Participatory Budgeting Project folks, the national organization, in to help with the orientation. And we sent those contracts through purchasing to officially have them on board as of last week. We are seeing a pickup in participation just as we've been pushing additional information out. I'd say not a lot, probably 3 or 4 ideas rolling in each day. That's got us up. It says 75 plus here. I looked this morning, we've got 82 submitted ideas in the system. The next step will be refinement of those projects. We've been intentionally broad in how we solicit ideas because we want to make sure that we're doing it equitably. It'd be easy for someone who works in government to just make an assumption that people know how much a project might cost, for instance. So we've taken a lot of those out in this part of the process, but then we've got to take people through a process of actually adding numbers to this and creating a workable project that then ultimately, end of the summer, beginning of the fall, people will be able to vote on. One of the interesting things I wanted to note is in the submission form, we have a lot of people who may not have an idea, but they do want to articulate what category of idea they might be interested in. That's about a factor of 3 to 1 in participation in the form. So about 150 people have filled out this part of the survey where we've got about 80-ish ideas in the system right now. Of these, it's worth noting that the top 3, so these aren't in an order of priority. The top 3 for the community in terms of things that they would like to see are investments in broadband, affordable housing and rehousing, and investing in healthy childhood environments. Those are the 3 that we have that are above 10% of the total votes. So that's where we are right now. And I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Ms. Farrick, to talk about the legislature.
Thank you. Good morning. And I am going to, here we go. So as you've likely heard, state revenues have really come in a lot higher than previously projected, which is leaving the state with a combined general fund and school aid revenue of $28.5 billion for the fiscal year 2022, and then just over $29 billion for fiscal year 2023. And this is $3.5 billion more than originally estimated at the beginning of the pandemic in January 2020. $7 billion in additional federal relief aid has yet to be appropriated by the legislature. So these are things like ARPA and CARES dollars, and they're largely going to be appropriated for one-time funded projects or initiatives. And then as well as $10 billion in federal infrastructure funds that is currently on its way to Michigan for roads, bridges, water systems, and addressing climate change. The federal budget for fiscal year 2022 is yet to be finalized. A continuing resolution was just adopted again, extending government operations into March. When this is finalized, it may include earmarks for the city. And the fiscal year 2023 budget process will be expected to get underway immediately following the resolution of fiscal year 2022. Additionally, the Federal Water Resources Development Act reauthorization process is underway, and the House has provided instructions for seeking appropriation authority for projects. So we are looking at submitting some to be considered for earmarks in that reauthorization. So to give you an idea of some of the state funding priority projects that we are advocating for at the state level, we have the Community Connections Sidewalk and Trail Connectivity Project, which will impact all 3 wards in the city to improve mobility, accessibility, and reducing disparities on measures that matter like income, educational attainment, health, and access to recreation. A solar and storage project at the Butterworth landfill site. Some language and appropriations for the Lead-Free Kids Grand Rapids pilot program to continue some of the recommendations that were put in place by the Lead-Free Kids Grand Rapids Advisory Committee. A fire station, actually 2 fire stations and a training facility within those for the Grand Rapids Fire Department. We have 2 park projects that we have prioritized, both the MLK Lodge and the Roosevelt Park improvement projects. We continue, as we have been, advocating for river restoration in the Greenway project in our river corridor. The 201 Market redevelopment and amphitheater project. And then the Grand Rapids Public Museum expansion project is something that we are very supportive of. And then just to mention, even though they're not really funding items, our top policy priorities continue to be legislation that will allow a local land bank and amendments to Public Act 20 to allow the city to capture a higher return on our investments.
All right, thank you, Ms. Farrick. So Mayor, we'll pause here to see if there's any questions about any of the information presented so far before we go in detail on some of the programs.
All right, Commissioners, any questions up until now? I know we still have some more material to get through, but we'll pause right now to see if there's any specific questions on information that's been presented so far. Commissioner Moody?
I have one. This is from Mr. Matthews in reference to the preparatory budget, where you said projects have to be in alignment with the ARPA priorities. Is that a must?
That's one of the requirements that was established in the process, was that there's got to be some alignment with the priorities that were set out in ARPA. One of the things that I will say is the final guidance from Treasury does give us a little bit more latitude in how we can interpret and shape those projects in a way that is in alignment with those priorities. So, you know, we're taking a pretty broad lens. I mean, if there's some things that just clearly aren't aligned, we've got to set those aside. But I believe that the committee is going to work towards finding ways to align them or combine them and align them as they can. But they're really not going to know until they know what's on the menu.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Commissioner Isasi?
Thank you, Mayor. You can stay right there, Mr. Matthews. So great to hear about kind of the projects or ideas coming in. I wanted to go back to, I think we talked about this maybe at one of our first conversations around PB, is how are we using any other data that we might have internally at the city? Like I'm thinking about calls to 311. How are we overlaying that? Obviously that is a different kind of participation, but I'm always just interested in like, how can we be responsive when people are calling us, and how does that inform some of this work overall? Like, is the committee looking at that information? Do they have an understanding of what other reasons people are calling into the city and trying to find solutions?
Well, the committee has been pretty explicit that they're not selecting ideas. So that kind of data could kind of help provide them with some perspective, but they're not creating ideas, nor are they making a determination on idea. So they're making a determination on the qualification when they get to that point. I do think some of that data will come in helpful if they have questions about, okay, well, which one of these really have meat on the bones to move forward. But that hasn't been part of the discussion so far, at least not in the context that you raised.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner, but I do think your point about
That's a good point.
some of the service issues that we're having in the city in general, and I think several of you mentioned it before, in getting more aggregate information around some of the issues and challenges residents are experiencing could inform not only the participatory, or people in their ideation in the participatory process, but it would obviously inform us as we discuss policy issues. And we do get a sense of that periodically, but I think what I've heard previously is a more structured cadence of general updates from 311 on some of the resident issues and resolutions.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Commissioner Sassi. And I thought between some of the feedback we get through 311 and then the upcoming community survey, there may be opportunities for us to look at some services that we need to enhance, and maybe talk about that as a part of the budget or after the budget.
And I would like to note as well that not just the 311 data, but that data in general, was something that we had started to get a good amount of traction on until about 18 months ago, when we had a series of departures, and a lot of that work has kind of been in stasis since, as we've reorganized. We do have kind of I don't want to say the final cog. We've got two pieces that we're still working to fill. Both of them are posted now. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get folks in those last two seats, because one of those is going to be data management and administration around the ERP broadly, but the other is going to be focused specifically on performance, which is one of those areas where we'd start to pick up a lot of traction, and we just haven't had the resources to be able to continue to build that out. But that's been an active conversation, including the 311 data.
Great.
Thanks. One more.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And thanks for kind of tying it so that's not all on maybe not all on PB, but how can this inform this process moving forward? My next question is for Ms. Farrick. So thanks for laying out. I think sometimes it's so hard to kind of follow what's happening, so I appreciate this very concise detail about what exists at the state level. I know that there's also been some conversations as it related to like state small business income tax coming into the state. And I think maybe in the last few weeks that went to like the Michigan Strategic Fund, conversations about how that money can flow into different revolving loan funds or into other CDFIs. And I know we've had that conversation. That was probably one of the last presentations Mr. Gracia and Mr. DeLong did around some of the revolving loan funds that we would be looking at. So I wonder if, there's obviously lots of priorities here, but any thoughts about how those dollars might flow into community banks, CDFIs, credit unions, so that can directly support small business entrepreneurship?
Certainly, that's something that I can work with Jeremiah and Deputy City Manager Eric DeLong on, how can we make sure that we're maximizing and optimizing any funds that might be available at the state level to come into our community. But that's something I'd have to have some further conversation with them about.
Yeah. It's a great question, Commissioner, and I know many of us have had conversations with folks about the MEDC RAP dollars and program, as well as some of the federal funds. And I do think it's important for us to be really good partners and be extremely aggressive in trying to get as many dollars back here into our community to support some of the work that we're doing and to support some of the work happening in our neighborhoods. So I think that's a worthwhile follow-up conversation that we should have, is who's really leading on that and how can we be extremely aggressive as we go after some of those pots of money. Yeah. All right, any final questions?
I just want to ask quickly,
Yep, go ahead,
Ms. Farrick.
Commissioner, and then we'll move on.
These priority projects, in our draft, there were some numbers attached to some of them. These are things that we plan to make a kind of a specific request for those buckets of money that are on the previous slide. Is that correct? For these things?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I was just trying to tie together what you were asking. Yes,
Okay.
so based on the increased revenue at the state level, we know that there will be dollars that will be appropriated because largely the federal money that has come in hasn't been appropriated yet. And some of these would be excellent candidates for one-time funding projects that could really go a long way in helping some of these either get off the ground or continue what's already been started.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I think with that, we'll move on and try to get through some additional information before we break or have to leave this afternoon. So,
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to remind the staff, I know they're all doing real good work, but we'll have another opportunity to go in much more detail during the budget process. So this is very high level, and Mr. Eric DeLong will be Mr. DeShort today.
It's following me around wherever I go lately. And the first time in 27 years. So. All right, so let's move forward. Talk about the housing fund first. So thank you for working to establish the housing fund and also working diligently to appoint the members. So we're staffed up now, 9 of 11 members, and almost ready to get started with orientation. And we've also made our first deposit to the Community Foundation, and we'll be working to begin orientation in late March, I hope, or early April, and then begin with the RFP for $5 million in ARPA investment in affordable housing thereafter. So we're in good shape here. Ms. Bohach will follow me now with more on housing.
Thank you. Good morning. In your last briefing, we had an update that included a number of community partners related to our efforts around homelessness, and this is just to give you to remind you of our continuum of care process and the point-in-time count and the data that's collected through that process. Here's a graph that shows 2016 through 2021. You may have seen this before in both the point-in-time count and then the housing inventory count that is taken in conjunction with that provides an identification of the beds that are actually available at that given time. The PIT count is done one time a year. It's typically done in January. This year, due to the pandemic, that's been delayed, and it's actually occurring tomorrow night. So we'll have data that will tell us where we're at after tomorrow night's count. It usually takes a couple months to actually get all that data out to us. But new this year, they are actually collecting the information in a method that allows us to disaggregate it. This is all county-wide data, and it will allow us to see what's actually going on in the city of Grand Rapids. We are moving forward with the Home Investment Partnerships ARP funding that was provided to the city or allocated to the city. That's $4.6 million to support persons who are homeless or at risk of homelessness and other vulnerable populations. You may recall that we recently completed an allocation plan that's required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to actually obtain those funds. And that process has been completed. HUD has approved our plan, and we are in the process of looking at potential projects through our funding process. We wrapped this into our annual allocation process or investment process that includes home and CDBG and ESG funds. And the notice of intent to apply has already come and gone. We've invited potential projects for full application submissions, and those are due back this week. And we will work through that process of identifying projects, and recommended investments will be released March 25th and will come to the full City Commission on the 29th of March. And it's planned that we will finalize through the City Commission process those awards by May 10th. We continue with community housing investments and endeavors that the city participates in, one being Housing Kent, which is the backbone organization that's been established for the Housing Stability Alliance. The Mayor Bliss and City Manager Washington have been appointed to that board. Eureka People has been appointed as the founding president and CEO of that entity, and there's been some initial funding raised for its launch of $1.4 million. Community Housing Connect expansion, we talked about that at your last update, and that is moving forward. That was the platform that was piloted that supported coordinated entry for families experiencing homelessness, and it's been determined that that is a good approach to use for our whole homelessness system to improve coordination and access of resources. It's a $1.5 million project, and the technology build-out portion of that is $750,000. The city committed through your approval, $250,000 in ARPA funds, and local philanthropy has committed $200,000 to date. We've also invested, as Ms. Claren has mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, that we have other investments of ARPA funds for homelessness. $330,000 was invested for winter shelter, day center operations, and a personal storage pilot program at 200 Division Avenue. We're averaging 62 shelter guests nightly, and that is comprised of 331 unduplicated individuals or unduplicated guests who are staying there, and there's average of 99 guests during the day at the center, and there's 242 unduplicated guests using the center. We currently have 158 storage bins on site. It's proving for the storage pilot is actually proving to be pretty popular because we just delivered some additional carts a few weeks ago. So that's becoming something that we're seeing is being highly utilized. The eviction prevention work in the community continues to be an important, there's important programs and services. You can see that this graph shows some trends in terms of the proceedings in the 61st District Court. You can see a very drastic dip, obviously, where the eviction moratoria had been put in place throughout the pandemic at various times. The availability of financial assistance for rent and utility arrears, as well as changes in the court process, are helping to allow judgments and actual evictions to remain low. The court now requires two hearings before a judgment can be issued, and that's allowing tenants the opportunity, so more time and ability to actually access community resources to keep that so that there aren't judgments and evictions that are occurring. In the last year, the city's 3 federal programs that we primarily use for these purposes supported 207 households with financial assistance and 533 people with legal services. So it's important to continue with those programs. Here's just a snapshot of the CIRA program. You heard from Gustavo Perez, who is the program coordinator at United Way. We heard from him at your last update. And this is the dashboard as of February 15th. And you can see that more than 6,000 households had been approved for financial assistance at that time. And Grand Rapids residents continue to be over 70% of those who are receiving financial assistance. We continue to work on lead hazard reduction initiatives. The Community Development Department continues its partnership with the Kent County Health Department, working participating in their lead action team work groups. We continue with our lead hazard control program here at the city, although we do continue to experience difficulties with availability of contractors and supply chain delays, but we were able to make 19 additional units lead safe since July. And we have hired Paul Hahn as our lead program specialist in the Community Development Department, and he is working with our code compliance and legal teams on the proposed lead paint inspection program. We're working to identify resources to address the financial impact that they may have, as well as having continued discussions with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services to ensure an approach that is more cost-friendly, using dust wipes as opposed to a full abatement process. And we're also, through that process, looking at some very promising partnerships with MDHHS on some broader policy and programs along the way.
Good afternoon. So I'll be updating you on the Fire Department's Recruit Academy and some other things that are happening within the Fire Department. In January, we were able to hire 15 new recruits. You can see the gender and diversity makeup of the class. I'm very excited about this class, and we are making incremental achievements as we move towards diversifying the Grand Rapids Fire Department. You can see a snapshot here of our total actual staffing and how it's reflected in our hiring classes and our attrition rate. This is a demographic comparison that's taking us through the last 5 years, and it'll detail those incremental moves that we are making towards our diversification efforts. A way that we are proposing that we are able to make some more definite advancements in our diversification efforts is through a cadet program. We'll be seeking more or supplying more information and seeking funding in this upcoming budget process in order to create this cadet program. And we hope that this would be a way for us to really mainstream and mainline some diversification into the department. Some other projects that we have in process right now is a SAFER grant opportunity. We have applied for 8 personnel, and this is a 3-year, no cost, no money out of the city's pocket for that period of time, and no strings attached. So we hope that that's a very competitive process, but we do hope we will be successful there. It'll give us an opportunity to be able to impact some of our metrics on the south end of town. Another issue we have in front of us is a public safety training center as we work with GRCC to attempt to achieve a universal facility for the county and others outside. But we still will need to maintain certain training elements within the city of Grand Rapids, but this will be a good collaborative effort with GRCC. And then lastly, the Kalamazoo area, we continue to prioritize a new facility down there in the 3rd Ward on the southern portion of Kalamazoo as we continue to see our metrics and gaps within those metrics on that south end.
Thank you, Chief. For the police strategic plan implementation, we're going to continue to identify innovative and successful recruitment, hiring, or retention measures to maintain staffing levels and diversify the workforce. We'll continue to implement and evaluate the co-response models, reestablish in-person community engagement efforts with appropriate safety protocols. Citizens Police Academy, the Youth Police Academy. Last year we attended 68 community events from July to January. We have several events upcoming. We're going to continue to shift low priority calls for service to more efficient means, leverage technology to allow for a safer and more efficient delivery of services, and continue to evaluate crime reduction strategies for citywide deployment. Moving forward, with the increase of staffing allotment, we're going to continue to aggressively recruit, hire, and train personnel to support that neighborhood policing model. We'll continue the culture shift to a guardian mindset to align with the community expectations. We'll continue to identify and evaluate innovative uses of technology to strategically address crime in communities and streamline operations. Co-response model. The mobile crisis response was launched in January of 2021. January to December, they had 63 mobile crisis response contacts. The homeless outreach team is another co-response model. In the last quarter, these are just the last quarter stats. You'll see more at the Public Safety Committee meeting, and you can see them in the graph. Considerations to expand co-response, implementing a contract with the Mobile Crisis Response Team for just Grand Rapids residents. Currently, it's a countywide program. Continue to add CIT trained officers in the department. Increase training for our dispatch personnel when these calls come in so they know where to send those calls. And continue to leverage resources with future Crisis Stabilization Center. Intended results: increase positive outcomes, increase training through evidence-based practices, and decrease the need for 911 emergency calls for service for our officers as it relates to mental health and substance use calls. Update on the neighborhood policing model. The fall patrol roster for 2021 showed about 88% of the city beats covered. That's currently where we're at right now. The neighborhood policing contacts on our department website. There are photos of the service area captain, and then every member that's assigned to those service areas is also listed there. Each officer has cards with a dedicated email and a message line for citizens to call. Collaboration with the neighborhood crime prevention. Participate along with the CU in the neighborhood events. We've been using crime data to tailor outreach and address neighborhood-specific crime. We've done a couple programs on the north end. Did one on the north end, which is lock your car and prevent auto theft, and that was in collaboration with the neighborhood organization using risk train modeling software, and it was very successful. We also are working on a Safe Streets campaign with all the neighborhood organizations. We have quarterly meetings with the neighborhood organizations with all of our command staff, and then monthly our captains meet with their individual neighborhood organizations. Some community program highlights that we pushed throughout the last year: our CLEAR program, which we've discussed before. That's the prisoner reentry program, coalition leadership, education, advice, and rehabilitation. It's been very successful. Partnership with the Boys and Girls Club and Courtesy Driving School. We started the Drive for Success program, where we've had 22 students graduate that segment 1 part. And then Clergy on Patrol. This was another thing that was started this year by our officers. We have 8 clergy, and they're assigned to 8 officers. It's a volunteer program with that group, and it's been very successful. The officers and the clergy have both enjoyed it. GRPD staffing, current authorized strength is 305. 24 of our officers are enrolled in the KEEP, the Key Employee Incentive Program. Projected staffing is fluid and changes daily with the hiring and retirements. And we've got a new police chief starting March 7th, so we could see all sorts of changes here at the police department. Recruitment, we've changed a lot of the things that we're doing. We're being a lot more aggressive in our recruiting with targeted recruitment ads. Approval by the city to increase lateral transfer pay to attract certified officers. We've increased the frequency of the civil service test offerings. Consistent outreach to colleges and universities, including campus multicultural organizations, diversity and inclusion departments, and HBCUs. We've continued in-house diversity roundtables to improve outreach efforts. Streamline recruitment process to benefit applicants and the investigators. We've surveyed potential candidates to find out what's important to them in their job search. The feedback on that is still being reviewed. Projected staffing timeline. I think most of you have seen this before. We are, like I said, fluid with retirements, but we continue to hire. Last week, I think I had 1 retirement, and we swore in 7. So we're on the upswing, hopefully. But we don't project to be fully staffed until 2022, and then those officers won't be cleared for solo patrol until 2023. Hiring trends, individuals who have successfully passed the civil service exam peaked in 2019. 66 to 65% of the individuals who make it to the background phase of the hiring process actually pass those backgrounds. And hiring peaked in 2020 with 25 individuals hired. The hiring climate has decreased interest in policing as a profession. It's a nationwide issue, not just here in Grand Rapids. Enrollment in the Michigan Police Academies is declining. Other West Michigan departments have also become more competitive, adding sponsorship academy programs. We used to be the only agency that did that, but all agencies are finding it hard to find candidates. Potential strategies, incentives for bilingual candidates and those with military experience, signing bonuses. Currently, we're researching background investigation software programs to streamline this process and remove technology barriers. The software works on any platform. Some comparative crime stats from the last year. All the statistics show the number of incidents, not the number of victims. Crimes against persons have risen since 2018. 5171 in 2018 to 5501 in 2021. Homicide offenses peaked in 2020 also with 34 incidents. That was 38 victims in 2020. In 2021, dropped to 18 incidents and 19 victims. Assault offenses, simple assaults are down over time. Aggravated assaults or assaults with a weapon have continued to increase over time. Property crime is down 15.1% from the previous year. Crimes where a gun was used in the commission of the crime peaked in 2020 and that declined slightly in 2021. Firearms discharge also peaked in 2020 but decreased by over 17% in 2021. Aggravated assaults, family gun, those are domestic related, has more than doubled since 2018, from 25 incidents to 54. We've seen an increase in weapon law violations since 2018 with the highest percentage change in 2020. The breakdown of offense code indicates an increase in carrying of a concealed weapon and other weapons offenses. Weapon firing increased since 2018 and had a decline in 2021 compared to 2020. Whereas when compared against 2018 and 2019, the number of incidents reported still remains higher.
Thank you. Good morning. I'll provide an update regarding crime prevention, specifically around the Cure Violence GR program. So Cure Violence GR employs violence interrupters who interact directly with key at-opportunity individuals to diffuse tensions before violence erupts. So we're really looking at data from October to December here, and the Cure Violence staff has had 218 interactions during that time with key individuals identified to have been involved in local violent activities. They've had 279 interactions with non-key individuals, and those are people who are not at opportunity of inciting violence but live in a target area and are impacted by community violence. The staff has also diffused 10 immediate conflicts that had high risk of leading to gun violence, and they've mediated with 43 key individuals involved in those conflicts. And again, key individuals are individuals identified as being involved in local violent activities. A notable intervention occurred on January 18th at a public location, and that's when the Cure Violence GR staff negotiated with rivaling street factions or street gangs to sign a peace treaty. And what they did was they brought these groups together to air their concerns and resolve those conflicts. Those individuals ate dinner together. They left actually taking photographs and agreeing not to be involved in violence with each other anymore. So that's one of those notable interventions that speak to the power of this model. Outreach staff has also provided support to key individuals to help change norms by providing educational referrals within and outside of the Urban League. So since October, there's been 1,112 interactions with households in that target area and who have given and received public education materials. 1,796 pieces of public education materials were dispersed, as well as COVID-19 PPE, health and wellness information. Cure Violence GR is currently organizing with families that have been referred to other community members for disengaged parenting and at-opportunity youth. This engagement at home is on the basis of calls from parents asking for assistance from this program. The Urban League of West Michigan has also provided wraparound services to provide housing and economic security to individuals who've come in through the Cure Violence process. 14 key individuals were referred to employment services, and 45 key individuals were referred to housing services and are currently working with Urban League staff to find long-term housing. In addition to the outreach efforts and the violence reduction efforts that have been talked about, there's been several engagement activities that have occurred. So as you all know, on November 10th at City Hall, we had the first introduction of the program that several of you were present for. And then on December 4th, there was another introduction at the Boys and Girls Club, the Paul I. Phillips Boys and Girls Club. But there's ongoing engagement that also occurs, and that's on Tuesdays, there's basketball at Covenant House, Thursdays, basketball at Baxter Community Center, and Saturdays, basketball at Paul I. Phillips Boys and Girls Club. And this is in addition to the canvassing that happens on a daily basis with the Cure Violence Group. Thank you.
So I'm going to continue on the COVID relief funds that were allocated, the $1.5 million allocated in end of last year. So again, we had $1.5 million allocated, and we are recommending the allocation in two separate ways. One, approximately $500,000 into entrepreneur support organizations through an active RFP process. Again, this is aligning with our strategic plan that supporting creation, retention, and growth of businesses. But most importantly, this RFP will focus on building partnerships and to multiply its reach and minimize redundancy of services. That's in direct support of our city values of collaboration and accountability of this investment. So you can see the status of this particular program in targeting a release in late March, early April, and having an RFP review committee and targeting award in May of '22. So the second program, again, is the establishment of a revolving loan fund. To Commissioner Zasi's point, how do we leverage that? The strategic decision was made to increase that capital investment to $1 million to make sure that more money was provided accessible for the businesses themselves. And with the key strategic initiative, if the ESOs can provide a feeder system into perhaps some of those folks becoming eligible and getting in a better position for even accessing this revolving loan fund or other revolving loan funds or other business support services within the city or the region. So again, this is increasing capital in neighborhoods of focus, which is part of our equitable economic development and mobility strategic plan. And we have loans that we've put up to $25,000 per business. That's kind of just where we put and where we have consistency. It will depend true as well as we look at the RFP itself and the best practices we learn from the selected organization that would be serving as underwriting and servicing the actual revolving loan funds through that process. And again, we target release of May, June, and award in July of '22.
The Economic Resiliency and Recovery Investment Strategy is primarily supported by supplemental awards of the Community Development Block Grant and Emergency Solutions Grants programs. We often refer to them as CDBG-CV and ESG-CV. Investments to date were made in 2 rounds. Some of the projects have been completed and others are underway. 70% of the funds have been expended to date, with round 1 actual expenditures exceeding the planned targeted third ward investment amount. As we close out projects, there's an opportunity to program approximately $1 million of the CDBG-CV funds within this ARIS framework. And we've actually added some questions in our RFP process and within the home ARP and neighbor investment plan process, so that if there are projects that come to light that would be eligible for the use of these funds, we can make some decision of whether or not we could select them for reprogram for use of these reprogram funds. If there are not adequate submissions in that under this realm, then we'll look at another opportunity to solicit for projects.
So now we'll move into other key programs for our final parts of the update. So we've made really good progress working with our partners on the 201 Market and Kent County Road Commission site. We've started work on the trunk sewer, got a little bit over half done this season. We'll finish it up by the spring of 2022. So probably in the late spring, midsummer. So we've also optioned the road commission site, and we're ready to move forward with that purchase at the appropriate time. We're continuing to work with the Convention and Arena Authority and other partners on acquisition of the northern portion of the 201 Market property. The current option date is end of March of 2022, so coming up here within 45 days. And the current date to exercise the actual purchase is later midsummer. So, and when those events occur, we're poised to create the Community Investment Fund to help with the relocation costs to Kent County Road Commission, and also to provide some initial funding for the Affordable Housing Fund. With that, I'll give it to Kristen. Ms. Turkelson.
Good morning, Commission. This slide should look familiar. This is the timeline of the Community Master Plan project. We remain in the pre-planning phase. We're in that project initiation stage. And so I think one of the key takeaways is that we remain on time and anticipated adoption in the early part of 2024. Some of the highlights from this first half of the fiscal year is that we had an appointment of a 50-member steering committee. The committee has been meeting monthly. They've done some good work around self-governance, review of the current plan, and also some applicable trainings. And also, the committee has been working on the RFP. The request for proposal was released on Friday, February 11th. The committee actually did choose to nominate individuals that participated in the review of the proposal prior to its release, and also opted to appoint a selection committee of one person per ward and one person as a city at large. Those individuals will sit alongside city staff, both myself and project manager Leila Aslani, and a planning commissioner to review those proposals and ultimately make a recommendation on the consultant that will be hired to assist the city in the development of the plan.
Good morning, Commissioners. We've collected data on park maintenance. You've heard a little bit about this. The last update was back in November. We wanted to demonstrate to you today the continued progress that we are making in park maintenance. That is not without significant headwinds that we ran into last year, primarily hiring of seasonal and temporary staff. Some countermeasures that we have put into place for this upcoming spring include raising that rate of pay, starting at $15 an hour to be more competitive. We continue to build a more robust weekly inspection process that we will continue to implement starting this spring, as well as continuing to build out a more robust Adopt a Park and volunteer program with the Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. With all of these steps, we are anticipating a better spring than last year to continue that positive momentum and progress.
Good morning. A few updates since November with respect to carbon reduction and climate resilience. We've really been increasing our focus on education, communication, and engagement. So did have a really good initial meeting with the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce to talk about some of the work that we're doing and partnerships there. And we'll be meeting with Richard App in the near future to talk about small businesses and how we can engage with those with respect to a number of the topics that we have on our plate for this work. Some more increased communications. We're getting ready to roll out a new website. We do have a new monthly newsletter that's going out to share with the community some work in general and what we're focused on. And then specific to education, my team has been working with Ms. Young for an internal staff training on sustainability and on climate change, and we'll be making a lot of those resources available to the community as well, so that they have a general understanding and awareness of some of the key concepts with respect to climate change and what we can experience here in the Grand Rapids area. And I should also say it's not here, but also working with Ms. Froley on the hazard mitigation plan, which I think has climate change included in it, as that's a very important topic there too. We will also be doing a training in partnership with Ms. Turkelson and the Master Plan Steering Committee to help provide them some information on climate change as well. With respect to solar, the picture on this slide is actually a picture of our Lake Michigan filtration plant and the solar panels that have been installed out there. So very exciting to see that actually coming to fruition at this point in time. The pollinator field has been seeded, and we're looking to do a formal launch here late spring or early summer. And in addition, there will be more information with respect to some cost estimates around Butterworth solar options that should be ready by late April or early May to come back and have a conversation with you with respect to some opportunities for solar on the landfill. Of course, I think you're aware that our efficiency work continues with respect to the biodigester. One of those is currently operating, and we're very excited that we'll be selling some renewable natural gas here in the very near future. So that's taking off. The LED street lighting conversion, that has been completed in the annexed area, which has the highest rates first. And now they're transitioning and we'll be focusing in our neighborhoods of focus next to do the conversion there, and hoping to have that fully completed by the end of this calendar year. We also received some fantastic national recognition in terms of a City Clean Energy Scorecard, and I really just big shout out to a lot of departments across the city. They look at, this was the first year they looked at transportation, but it includes our water utilities. It of course includes things like our street lighting projects and our solar projects, and other work that we've been doing around those areas. So a lot of work across the city with respect to that national recognition. Just a few details on two significant projects you've been hearing more about with respect to our EH0 building initiative. Again, that's a 3-year grant-funded program that we have in partnership with the U.S. Green Building Council and the Urban Core Collective. So we did, as a part of that, receive funding and want to prioritize having a BIPOC consulting team that's on board to help us ensure that we're embedding equity into the conversation and any research into potential policies or programs where we can help to decrease carbon emissions from our buildings. Been working very closely with a number of internal departments from community development, planning, economic development to ensure that we're aligning this work and possibilities and being thoughtful about how other departments will be engaged in that work. We were very fortunate to be invited to participate in a White House inaugural program on building performance standards. There were only 33 cities, a couple state governments that were included, that were invited to launch into that launch, and it just aligns very nicely with our EH0 program, so it was right in line with that to be able to participate there. Recently, we just released an RFP to bring on a housing partner organization that will help really to kind of be the project manager for our hopeful at least 5-home renovation project. We are seeking some funding to hopefully expand that beyond that, but at a minimum, we want to be able to do 5 homes and bring on a partner to help us through that. And then really focusing on the commercial building side, just wanted to note that we are getting ready to launch here in a couple days a pretty significant webinar series for commercial building stakeholders that want to receive some more information on, benchmarking or what are building performance standards or what does electrification mean, so that we're ensuring that we're getting that information so people can have that in order to have robust conversations about some policies. For the climate plan, still in the early phases, we are lining up some of our partners. Mobile GR is a significant partner because transportation is so important in this work, so big thanks to Mr. Naramore for his partnership there. Also working with the C4 as well, and we'll be doing our community-wide carbon inventory as well as a vulnerability assessment across the entire community. We have some great plans. My team's been doing some research to really see some best practices for how environmental and climate justice has been incorporated, but I'm very confident that we can be a leader in this area and create a best practice to do this within our own community here in Grand Rapids, and really starting to identify what those key topics will be within the plan, and that's something that we've been communicating and working with the C4 as well.
All right, thank you for all those lightning talks, briefings, very efficient. Just a reminder of our schedule, and if you can go to the next slide, please. Next one. And so just in summary, what you heard is a summary of our near-term priorities that we've been focused on since the fiscal retreat, mid-year retreat, as well as other focus areas. And at this time, Mayor, I would turn it back to you and see if there are any questions from your colleagues, and it might be helpful just to refer to each section as we go through questions and discussions.
Yeah, thanks, City Manager. And I want to also clarify, so we have 3 additional PowerPoint handouts in front of us?
That's for public safety, I think.
These are for public safety? Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have more information to get
Nope,
through
this
this
is-
morning. So
C'est tout,
it's
right?
good information. I looked through it, so thank you. All right, Commissioners, I'll open it up for questions or comments. Commissioner Repart?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think I have maybe 2 questions and 1 shout out. I just, DC Reifenberg, I just want to say, I know that neighborhood policing model rollout has been challenging, but at our Captain McCursey just started on the west side, and he came to the Business Association meeting and handed out those business cards with the numbers, and I think that's really going to be helpful. So all I wanted to do is just give a shout out. I think that's going to help kind of with some of the communication challenges. I think my other 2 questions are for Ms. Bohach. One is on the chart about the point in time, and then also the available units, there's the permanent supportive housing number, it's like 1,000 something. Are those available units, or are those just in the city of Grand Rapids, we have that many permanent supportive housing units?
So actually, that is, again, part of that snapshot in time. So on that particular date, those were the number of units in service and
Okay.
were in service. So they were likely occupied, and that will fluctuate in terms of the availability of, they refer to beds, and I think I put a little note on there that said it included it also includes seasonal emergency shelter beds, so
Okay.
that number goes up and down.
I see.
And it really is based on resource availability,
Yeah.
right, for that given year.
Okay. And then on slide 64, there's this kind of opportunity to reprogram approximately $1 million of CDBG money. Is that in addition to the Equitable Business Revolving Loan Fund?
Yes.
As a possibility for people to apply
That's
based on?
completely separate. So the CDBG CV funds, through the ERIS investment strategy, we did 2 rounds that we put out into the community, and some of those projects were done by, some of it was city departments, but the majority was with our nonprofit partners. And so now, and some of those projects have ended, and some are still ongoing. So basically, we're looking at where we're at in terms of the funds that we have ability to reprogram from closing out projects, things that may not have spent the amount that was intended to be spent or planned to be spent, and those that maybe aren't really going forward at this point. So we'll, just like we do with all of our other funds on an annual basis, we'll kind of collect them again and are looking for opportunities to put them back out into the community.
Okay, wonderful. I think those are my questions. I do want to just affirm to the city manager, sticking with these near-term priorities as well as also these additional focus areas. I mean, obviously, particularly, I'm happy to see a bit more emphasis on climate work getting kind of embedded throughout the organization, but just affirm the priorities and sticking with what we're working on.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. And I'll also just give one more shout out that I'm absolutely delighted to have Paul Hahn join the city and help us lead the important work around childhood lead poisoning and lead abatement. So thank you, Ms. Bohach. I am eager to hear an update on our plans for this year. Commissioner Isasi, and then Commissioner Lanier, and then Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, too, for the presentation. It was lightning, but I would say it was very concise, and so thank you. I want to give a shout out to Chief Lehman. So we did get an update about some of the recruitment efforts in our last civil service meeting. So thank you for the efforts there, Chief. Glad to see that shared in this update. I just wanted to make a comment about, as it relates to the revolving loan fund. I'm glad to see the RFP, and I'll go out to those that have that knowledge associated with running one of these. My question was, as we look at, I'm kind of thinking back to appointments, we look at some of these review committees. I want us to really evaluate who do we bring into these conversations. I love our banking partners, and also the way that commercial loans are evaluated at banks are very different than are done in other alternative lenders. So I want to make sure we're bringing in folks who look at risk in different ways, just so then we can make sure we're not perpetuating some past systems of where people weren't able to get business loans. So that's one comment. And then just the other item I wanted to say, thanks to DC, it's, the detail around the domestic pieces, I think was really, I know you've been sharing that in some of our SAFE updates and other meetings that we have, but I think some targeted pieces there as it relates to what people have been experiencing in 2020, and just some of the other stories that you've shared is particularly sad to see. And so I know our prosecutors involved with SAFE and other ways that we can continue to look at these systems so we can prevent, I know we had one right before the Christmas holiday. And so just seeing more effort to be able to talk about it, and then to see what efforts and what strategies can be employed there would be particularly important to me in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, for elevating that. That was on my list as well, and I'm glad that we're continuing to have broader conversations even with our domestic assault response team. So it's clearly a key issue that we need to continue to focus on. Commissioner Lanier, and then Commissioner Jones.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Very detailed and thorough presentations. Thank you all so much. I'll be brief. And really mines are probably similar to my colleagues, just really thanking staff for some of the updates, really good updates all across the board, but I'll just highlight a few. Thank you, Ms. Bohach, for kind of sharing a little bit about the personal storage pilot and the expansion of that. As we're trying to meet the needs of all people in our community, it's great to hear that it's being utilized and that there's a need to go further with that. Thank you, Chief Lehman, for sharing some of your work on the fire safety initiatives and the expansion in the south side of the city. I know we've had some conversations and looked at some of the data there, so thank you for that update. I'm curious to know a little bit more about where C4 is in their engagement. I know there's a lot, and I think you spoke briefly to this, but I'm just curious to know if there's if we have like a timeline of when their work should unfold. I know we've had a lot of engagement there, so I'm just curious if we can get an answer on that. And then, other than that, just ditto, ditto, ditto from what's been said.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you for the question on C4. So we, the committee, just about a little less than a month ago, finalized a new contract with a project coordinator. So Ned Andre has been brought on board to facilitate that. And we did have an action planning strategy meeting with new members. We have a final list of 24 members. So we increased the number of folks that were participating from last year to be more representative of the community in terms of looking at some business interests and some other areas that the team felt was lacking with the number of initial folks that were participating. So we have asked the executive team as well as Mr. Andre when we could have a kind of a public launch with a supporting website to go out with that to really start getting that information out. And the other two next key steps would be a call for public that will be interested in serving on some subcommittees so that we can get more engagement from those in the community who are interested in engaging, as well as there was specific funding to hire some community ambassadors. And so some work is being done around creating what that scope of work would look like and what criteria the team would like to put in place with respect to the ambassadors. My hope is that within a month, maybe a little more, there will be a public announcement and launch to bring everybody up to speed as to who's been nominated to be on the committee and these other public engagement opportunities.
Great. Thank you. And would we, as they're looking at community ambassadors, is there any interest in having business ambassadors? I think, a lot of this work is really going to be upon the business community to take on some of the practices as well. So I don't know exactly how they're looking at doing that, but I would encourage you all to consider the business community its own community and have ambassadors who would be willing to have conversations at that level as well.
Okay, I appreciate that recommendation. We have a meeting next week, so I'll be sure to share that with the team.
Yeah, good insight.
Commissioner Lear, I too have heard feedback along those lines that since many of the changes will affect their operations, that they would like to have more engagement in those conversations.
Thanks. Commissioner Jones?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, staff, for the presentation on this morning. Got a couple of questions or comments regarding slide number 23. I know I think are all waiting with bated breath regarding the state and the additional funds that are going to be made available. Just wondering, City Manager, if we have some idea of if we begin to put together some form of wish list or direction in which we'd like to go with trying to access some of those additional funds that are going to become available by the state. I would think that any city or municipality throughout the state of Michigan is going to be acting aggressively, but just wondering if we have any idea, or at least, again, some sort of wish list regarding those resources.
Yep, thank you, Commissioner. We've actually been using several approaches. One, continuing with the legislative priorities that the City Commission approved in the legislative agenda. And we can certainly go into more details of the specific needs that we see around the priority projects that Ms. Farrick highlighted previously. But we've also been doing a lot of this work in collaboration with some of our other partners in having a unified West Michigan approach and amplifying our voices. And I know the mayor has been very active as well in using her office and making direct contact with legislators in the governor's office. But we have been pretty, I think, pretty collaborative with some of the other units of government and been pretty aggressive in our ask.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
and Commissioner, I would add, I think there's a number of moving parts right now.
Mhm.
Obviously, we have the state budget process, annual budget process. There are very likely some supplementals that'll be much more targeted. But then you have a lot of departments that have been given pots of money where they'll be giving out those dollars through a grant process, both at the state level and the federal level. So even you look at some of the federal funds that have been allocated, they'll be dispersed through a competitive grant process. And so having multiple approaches to each pot of funds that fit our needs, I think is really important. And the team here internally, they've been looking at how do we make sure that we have a plan for each of those.
Very good.
So.
Good. Another question I have, this is for Ms. Bohach. This is very much a hypothetical, but if money were not an issue, what would be probably the expected amount of units that we could make lead safe? I know that it's mentioned that 19 units since July 1st, 2021, but if there were, again, significant resources made available, how many homes could we?
That's a really tricky question to answer standing right here, right now. Traditionally, in our housing rehabilitation programs, in terms of what we do with the city resources, we try to target about 50 a year. But that's also because of, staff capacity, contractor capacity. So there's a number of factors that we have to consider. And right now, I couldn't tell you what that magic number is. I can tell you that if we're looking at doing an inspection program, obviously, there's going to be, if we want to mitigate some of the financial impacts that will have in our community, it will be a significant amount of resources. We have to figure out with the state, though, what would be what approach they would allow us to take in that process. us. But, I can try to work on a better number for you, but standing here, I really can't do that.
Okay, and then one other question along,
I think one of our biggest issues right now is contractor
that's what I was,
availability.
yeah, that's,
And it's not just in terms of the construction side, it's risk assessors, it's those who do all the work involved in that whole chain.
Yep. So if I could add to her comment, so maybe it's a two-part. One, if money were not an issue, what's our capacity? Then the other part is, what's the need beyond just capacity? Yeah. Okay.
all right. And then along those lines, regarding the lead, just a ballpark number of how many do we assume have lead?
Yeah. You're testing my memory here. If I remember the number of units pre-1978 that are rental units, I think it was about 14,000.
Okay, all right,
Just a little over.
okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add, one thing we did, Commissioner, during our lead task force is try to really hone in on, out of those units, how many are likely family units where children are living, and how do we prioritize those? And so we can probably pull up that data that analysis that we did a couple of years ago and share that. My guess is Paul Hahn probably knows off the top of his head, so.
That gets a little tricky though when we're targeting family units particularly, because we don't really know who's moving in and out. And then, as the government entity who may need to do some regulation related to that, you don't really have the ability to regulate because you don't know when people are transferring in and out of those units, if they actually have children or don't have children. So we can surely get the number in terms of the number of bedrooms and things which would be more conducive to a family unit, but we don't really know who's living there.
Very good, okay, thank you very much.
I'll just add one more, only because this is such an important issue that we've been talking about for years. So Commissioner, I think this is exactly why our partnership with the rental property owners is so critical. We really want to identify those units where it has a higher probability of lead, where there are children under the age of 6 living. We know that that's, if we're going to be targeted in our approach, especially with limited dollars, having those key partnerships, I think, are really key. And obviously working with the health department when they do their testing. Commissioner O'Connor.
Yeah, and I've asked before, I just wanted to understand what a real cost is. Like, on an average house that's of, 1,600 square feet of whatever size of what age that has lead in it, like, how much does it cost to do this? I think it's really hard to make policy decisions about, hopeful outcomes without a real understanding of the fiscal impact of this. And, as we continue to talk about the need for affordable housing in our community, it's balancing the need for lead-safe homes versus houses that people can afford. And lead can have the remediation of lead can have, significant fiscal impacts on the bottom line of a property owner or landlord to be able to provide something at a reasonable cost, so.
All right, any final questions before we finish up this presentation? I'll add a couple things. One, even though the presentations were reviewed quickly, actually we had about an hour and 20 minutes, which is, I think, a good amount of time. A lot of good information. Much of it we've been following and talking about for a long time, so there's not a whole lot of new issues, but it's great to get updated, especially on the numbers and some of the progress that we've made. And commissioners will have more time to take a deeper dive into these areas during our budget review process, but if you do have specific questions after today, please follow up with our city manager. I know he and the entire leadership team, they are more than welcome to get additional details to us when we ask. So please do that if you have follow-up questions. And then I know many of you will be joining us today. I'll just put it out there so people are reminded that there is an exciting public event today at 1:30 as we celebrate the name changes. And so I hope, and where is that? At the corner of, let me look at my.
I'm going to ask Mr. Mr.
Oh, Mr.
Canfield, too.
Canfield, why don't you tell us about this? Give us all the details, since I don't have them in front of me.
Yes, the public event is at 1:30, and it is at the corner of Cesar Chavez, formerly Granville, and Martin Luther King Jr. Street, formerly Franklin Street.
Thank you, thank you. And hopefully we'll have a little break in the weather, but if not, bring your umbrella. And we hope to see as many of you there as possible. It's a really momentous day in our city. So, City Manager, anything you want to add before we end?
I do want to thank the staff again for their work in preparation for today. And thank you, Commissioners, for your engagement in budget discussions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you to all of the staff who presented today for the information that you shared, but also just for all your continuing work. So thank you. And with that, we will be done with our Committee of the Whole, and we have Public Safety, and then also we'll be back here together again tonight at 7.
Public Safety at 3:30.
Public Safety at 3:30.